Imagine this. A cold, relentless rain pours down on a bustling city. Amid the chaos, a desperate mother clutches her newborn twins, her tears blending with the storm. She's alone, trembling, and running out of hope, until a stranger steps out of the shadows. But this isn't just any stranger. It's a millionaire, a man who seemingly has it all, but feels like he has nothing. In that fleeting moment, two lives collide, and what happens next changes everything. Why would someone with so much risk it all for a woman he's never met? What secrets is she hiding? And how far will they go to protect the innocent from unimaginable danger? This story is about courage, redemption, and the power of compassion to transform lives. Stick around, because the twists, heartbreak, and triumph will leave you breathless, and perhaps even inspire you to believe in second chances. The rain came down in relentless torrents, drowning the city streets under its unyielding rhythm. Adam Warren adjusted his grip on the leather steering wheel of his black Mercedes, his knuckles whitening under the soft glow of the dashboard lights. The chaos of Seattle pulsed around him, blaring horns, flickering neon signs reflecting off rain-slick streets, and pedestrians clutching umbrellas as if their lives depended on it. Inside his car, the luxury was almost suffocating, the silence too pristine. It had been another long, uninspiring day. Another deal closed, another victory that felt like nothing. Adam's life was a meticulously built empire, yet every triumph seemed hollow, as if he had lost something along the way. As he approached an intersection, the rhythmic hiss of the wipers slowed, and a figure caught his eye. On the dimly lit sidewalk stood a woman, hunched against the storm, clutching two tiny bundles close to her chest. Her coat clung to her frame, soaked through, and her shoulders trembled visibly. Adam frowned, his foot instinctively easing off the accelerator. Something about her stillness amidst the chaos around her was jarring, a picture of desperation and fragility. His gaze flicked to the rearview mirror, scanning the desolate street behind him. No cars, no other pedestrians. She was alone. Before he could fully process what he was doing, Adam had pulled his car to the curb and opened his door. Rain lashed against his suit, but he barely noticed. "Ma'am," he called, his voice cutting through the downpour. "Are you all right?" The woman startled, her head snapping up. Wide, frightened eyes met his, and Adam saw exhaustion etched into every line of her face. The bundles in her arms shifted, and realization struck him. They were babies. Tiny faces peeked out from the soaked fabric, their small bodies trembling against her chest. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice cracked, and her lips were tinged blue from the cold. "Leave us alone." Adam took a cautious step closer, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "You're out here in the rain, alone, with two infants. This isn't safe for you or them." Her chin lifted slightly, defiance flashing across her face despite her evident exhaustion. "We'll manage." He could see the wobble in her stance, the way her arms tightened around the babies as if shielding them from him. It wasn't just the rain weighing her down. It was something deeper. Adam scanned the area again. The street lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows over empty sidewalks. She didn't have anywhere to go. "I don't mean you any harm," Adam said, softening his tone. "My car is warm. Let me help you." For them. For a moment, she hesitated, her gaze flickering between Adam and her babies. The fight in her shoulders seemed to drain, replaced by something heavier. Finally, she nodded, her voice barely audible. "Just for tonight." Adam stepped aside, opening the car door for her. As she climbed in, careful to shield the twins from the rain, he felt a strange pull in his chest, a weight he hadn't recognized in years. He slid into the driver's seat, and for the first time in a long time, his day felt like it had a purpose. The car ride was silent, the tension thick enough to cut through. Amanda, she had murmured her name hesitantly when asked, sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her soaked coat dripping onto the pristine leather. Her entire body seemed coiled, a protective barrier around the tiny lives she held. Adam stole a glance at her, noting the way her hands trembled, not from the cold, but from exhaustion. As the Mercedes rolled through the winding driveway leading to his mansion, the towering structure came into view. Glass and stone loomed against the stormy backdrop, the lights inside casting a warm, golden glow. It was an architectural marvel, yet to Adam, it had always felt more like a monument to his success than a home. Tonight, for the first time, it seemed to hold the promise of something more. Amanda hesitated in the foyer, her wide eyes darting around as she took in the sleek furniture and polished floors. She looked painfully out of place, her drenched figure a stark contrast to the pristine surroundings. Adam noticed her grip on the twins tighten, her steps tentative as though afraid her very presence might shatter the perfection around her. "Let me take your coat," Adam offered, stepping toward her. She recoiled instinctively, clutching the twins tighter. "No," she said quickly. "I'll keep them with me." Adam raised his hands in surrender, his voice calm. "All right. Caleb will bring some towels." At the mention of Caleb, Adam's assistant appeared. Sharp-featured and efficient, Caleb's piercing gaze flicked to Amanda, lingering just long enough to spark discomfort. Amanda shifted under his scrutiny, her posture growing more defensive. "Right away," Caleb said, his tone neutral, but his brows furrowed slightly. He disappeared down the hallway, leaving the air heavy with unspoken questions. Amanda sank onto the edge of a couch in the living room, her movements stiff and hesitant. Adam returned moments later with a tray of tea and biscuits. "Here," he said, placing it gently on the coffee table. "It's not much, but it'll help." She reached for the cup, her hands trembling as she cradled it for warmth. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "Thank you." Adam watched her for a moment, noting the hollowness in her eyes. "What are their names?" he asked, gesturing to the twins. "Lucas and Logan," she murmured, her gaze fixed on the tiny bundles. "They're everything. And you?" Adam pressed gently. "What's your name?" Her eyes flickered up to meet his briefly. "Amanda." "All right, Amanda," Adam said, leaning back slightly. "You're safe now." The words seemed to hang in the air, fragile and uncertain. Amanda's lips parted as if to respond, but she hesitated, her gaze drifting back to the twins. Her silence spoke volumes. Safe was a word she no longer believed in. The mansion was silent that night, save for the faint hum of rain pattering against the wide glass windows. Amanda sat on the edge of the plush couch, her legs tucked beneath her, and the twins swaddled in her arms. They had finally fallen asleep, their tiny breaths rhythmic and calming. Adam stood by the fireplace, his gaze fixed on the flames, the flickering light casting shadows across his sharp features. "Do you want something to eat?" Adam asked, breaking the silence. Amanda hesitated, her lips parting slightly before shaking her head. "I'm fine." "You haven't eaten since you got here," Adam pressed gently. "You should take care of yourself if you're going to take care of them." Her body tensed at his words, and her eyes flicked down to the twins. "I've been taking care of them just fine." Adam caught the defensive edge in her tone and decided to step back. "I'm not doubting that. I just want to help." He paused, then added, "You don't have to do it alone." Amanda's eyes narrowed slightly, as if weighing the sincerity in his words. After a moment, her shoulders relaxed just enough for Adam to sense a crack in her armor. She adjusted the blanket around the twins and leaned back. "I'm not used to people offering help without wanting something in return." Adam frowned at the bitterness in her voice, but didn't press. Instead, he asked, "How old are they?" 2 weeks, Amanda replied softly, her tone almost reverent. "Lucas and Logan were born earlier than expected." Adam's brows furrowed. "They're so young. Why were you out there, in the rain, alone?" Her hands tightened protectively around the twins, and for a moment, Adam thought she wouldn't answer. Then, her voice broke through the heavy silence, quiet but firm. "I didn't have a choice. They tried to take them from me." Adam's frown deepened. "Who?" "The hospital," Amanda said, her voice trembling. "After they were born, they told me I couldn't give them the life they needed. They wanted me to sign adoption papers. She let out a shaky breath. When I refused, they started pressuring me, saying it was for their own good. But I overheard them. They weren't planning to let me leave with my boys. Adam felt a chill creep up his spine. So you ran? I had to, Amanda said, her voice cracking. They would have taken them if I stayed. The weight of her words settled between them. Adam remained silent, his mind racing with questions, but he knew better than to push. Instead, he nodded slowly. You did what you had to do. Amanda's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she looked at him. I don't know if it's enough. Adam didn't have an answer for that. He simply sat down across from her, letting the quiet crackle of the fireplace fill the room. The next morning, Adam stood in his home office, gazing out the wide window as the city began to stir. Caleb entered, a tablet in hand, his expression serious. She's hiding more than she's letting on, Caleb began, his tone cautious. But I looked into the hospital she mentioned. And? Adam asked, his voice low. Caleb handed him the tablet. It doesn't add up. I found recent complaints filed anonymously, mothers claiming they were coerced into giving up their children. A few mentioned the same name she did. Adam's eyes scanned the screen, his jaw tightening. Illegal adoptions? Possibly, Caleb replied, but there's no concrete proof yet. If it's true, they're careful. The paper trail ends before it even starts. Adam set the tablet down with more force than intended. Keep digging. I will, Caleb said, though his gaze lingered on Adam. But you're not getting involved in this, are you? Adam's eyes narrowed. If what she's saying is true, this isn't just her fight. It's dangerous, Caleb warned. Whoever's behind this has connections, money, power. You could jeopardize everything you've built. Adam crossed his arms, his tone firm. Then it's worth jeopardizing. Caleb sighed, recognizing the resolve in Adam's expression. All right, but don't say I didn't warn you. Later, Amanda entered the kitchen with the twins, her steps hesitant. She found Adam preparing coffee. The air between them was still cautious, but something unspoken had shifted. You don't have to trust me, Adam said, sensing her presence. But you should know that I'm going to help you. No strings attached. Amanda stared at him, her expression unreadable. Why? Adam hesitated, the image of his estranged sister flashing in his mind. Because I can. Amanda didn't respond, but her gaze softened ever so slightly. She took a seat, her movements careful and deliberate. For the first time, she let her guard drop, if only for a moment. The late afternoon sun fought to break through the heavy clouds hanging over the city, but inside Adam's mansion, the tension was palpable. Amanda sat in the living room, the twins bundled close as their soft whimpers filled the space. Adam stood by the window, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Anything new? He asked, glancing at Caleb, who was typing furiously on his laptop across the room. Caleb didn't look up. I've been tracing the hospital's financial records. There are gaps, large amounts of money moving in and out, but no legitimate explanation for the transfers. Whoever's behind this is careful, but they're leaving breadcrumbs. Amanda's gaze flicked to Caleb, her fingers tightening on the blanket around Logan. Breadcrumbs won't stop them, she said quietly. They'll lead to something bigger, Caleb replied, his tone confident. We just need time. Time isn't something we have, Amanda muttered, her voice trembling. They're going to find me. Adam turned toward her, his voice calm but firm. You're safe here. They won't get to you or the boys. Amanda shook her head, her eyes shimmering with fear. You don't understand. They don't stop. They're powerful. A sudden, loud thud echoed through the mansion, cutting her off. Everyone froze. Adam exchanged a sharp glance with Caleb before moving toward the hallway. Amanda clutched the twins tighter, her breath hitching. Stay here, Adam said over his shoulder as Caleb silently followed him. As Adam reached the main door, another thud reverberated through the space. He opened the door cautiously, finding nothing but the empty driveway and the faint hum of the city in the distance. Caleb stepped outside, scanning the area. Could have been the wind, Caleb murmured. Adam frowned. It didn't sound like the wind. Suddenly, the sound of glass shattering erupted from the back of the house. Amanda screamed from the living room, and Adam and Caleb sprinted toward the sound. They found Amanda backed against a wall, shielding the twins as a masked man loomed over her, brandishing a crowbar. Adam didn't think. He lunged forward, grabbing the man by the arm and yanking him back. The intruder swung wildly, narrowly missing Adam's head. Caleb tackled the man from behind, pinning him to the ground. Amanda pressed herself into the corner, her breathing ragged as she rocked the twins in an attempt to calm them. Within moments, Caleb had the man restrained. "Who sent you?" he demanded, his voice ice cold. The intruder remained silent, his eyes darting around the room. Adam leaned in, his tone low and dangerous. "You've already lost. Tell us who sent you, or we'll find out another way." The man smirked, but said nothing. Caleb's grip tightened. "This isn't over," he hissed. The intruder was gone, handed over to the authorities, but the unease lingered in the mansion like a heavy fog. Amanda sat at the kitchen table, her face pale and her hands trembling as she sipped a cup of tea Adam had made for her. "They're escalating," Adam said, pacing the room. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with an edge of anger. "This wasn't random. They know where you are." Amanda's voice was barely above a whisper. "I told you they'd find me." Adam stopped, turning to her. "Then we'll make sure they don't." Caleb entered the room, his phone in hand. "I've arranged for a secure house outside the city. It's remote and off the grid. They won't find her there." Amanda looked between them, her brow furrowed. "I can't keep running forever. What happens when they find me there too?" "They won't," Caleb said firmly. "This is different. They won't be able to trace you." Amanda hesitated, her eyes dropping to the twins. "And what about you?" she asked Adam. "You're putting yourself at risk for someone you don't even know." "Why?" Adam didn't answer immediately. He leaned against the counter, his gaze fixed on her. "Because I can't stand by and do nothing," he said finally. "Not when I have the power to help." Amanda didn't reply, but the guarded look in her eyes softened. She glanced down at her boys, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll go." The next morning, Adam and Caleb escorted Amanda and the twins to the safe house. It was a small, secluded cabin nestled deep in the woods. The air was crisp, the only sounds the rustle of leaves and the occasional bird call. Amanda stepped out of the car, cradling the twins as she surveyed her new surroundings. "It's not much," Caleb said, gesturing to the modest cabin. "But it's safe." Amanda nodded, her expression unreadable. She entered the cabin, her steps slow and deliberate. Adam followed her inside, watching as she gently placed the twins on the couch. For the first time in days, she exhaled deeply, her shoulders sagging with exhaustion. "You'll have everything you need here," Adam said. "Food, supplies, security. If anything happens, call me." Amanda glanced at him, her voice soft. "Why do you care so much?" Adam hesitated, his mind flashing to memories he had spent years trying to bury. Memories of his estranged sister, of the last time he had failed to protect someone he cared about. "Because sometimes," he said, his voice low, "you don't get a second chance." The first night in the safe house was silent, save for the faint cries of Lucas and Logan as Amanda rocked them to sleep. The twins were restless, their tiny hands reaching out as if sensing the turmoil around them. Amanda moved through the dimly lit cabin, her every step cautious, her ears attuned to the slightest sound outside. Adam and Caleb had stayed longer than they initially planned, ensuring that Amanda and the twins were settled. Now, Adam sat on the porch steps, staring into the darkness of the woods. Caleb leaned against the doorway, his arms crossed. "You don't trust her," Adam said without looking at him. Caleb exhaled sharply. "I don't trust the situation, Adam. We're not just dealing with a scared mother running from a bad hospital. There's more to this than she's telling us." Adam glanced over his shoulder. "She's scared. She's protecting her children. You hold back too, if you were in her shoes. That may be true, Caleb replied, his tone even. But scared people make desperate decisions. And desperate decisions get people hurt. Inside, Amanda's sharp ears caught fragments of their conversation. She stood in the shadow of the doorway, her lips pressed into a tight line. Trust was not something she had been afforded in her life. And even now, when she wanted to believe Adam's intentions were genuine, Caleb's skepticism stung. When Adam came back inside, she was waiting. "You don't have to pretend to believe me," Amanda said, her voice quiet but steady. "I heard what Caleb said." Adam paused, caught off guard by her directness. "It's not like that," he started, but she cut him off. "It's exactly like that," Amanda said, adjusting Logan in her arms. "You're risking everything to help me, and you don't even know if I'm telling the whole truth." Adam stepped closer, his tone firm but calm. "You don't owe me every detail of your life, Amanda. What matters is that you and your boys are in danger, and I have the means to help." Amanda looked at him for a long moment, her expression softening despite herself. "You've already done more than anyone ever has. But you should know that Caleb is right. I haven't told you everything." Adam's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. He simply nodded, silently urging her to continue. Amanda sat down, holding Lucas close as she began to talk. "When I was admitted to the hospital, I thought it was just going to be a routine delivery. But from the moment the twins were born, things felt off. The nurses kept insisting I needed to rest, but they wouldn't let me see my boys. They told me it was standard procedure because they were premature." Her voice faltered, and Adam leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. And then they brought me papers," Amanda continued, her hands trembling slightly. "They told me it was for their care, that I was consenting to specialized treatment. But when I read the fine print, I realized it wasn't about treatment. It was about adoption." Adam's eyes narrowed. "They tried to trick you into giving up custody." Amanda nodded, her voice filled with bitterness. "When I refused, they started pressuring me. The doctor kept saying I wasn't fit to be a mother, that I didn't have the resources to take care of them. They were so persistent. But when I overheard two nurses talking about closing the deal on Logan, I knew I had to get out." Adam's grip on the armrest tightened. "And you've been running ever since." "Yes," Amanda said, tears brimming in her eyes. "But it's not just the hospital. There's more. I think they're part of something bigger." "What do you mean?" Adam asked, his voice sharp. Amanda took a shaky breath. "Before I left, I saw files on a desk, names of other mothers. And not just one or two. There were dozens. I think they've been doing this for years, targeting vulnerable women." Adam stood abruptly, pacing the small cabin. His mind raced, connecting dots that had seemed distant before. Caleb entered the room, catching the tail end of the conversation. "Sounds like trafficking," Caleb said, his voice grim. "And if that's the case, they won't stop until they get what they want, or until someone stops them." Amanda flinched at Caleb's bluntness, but Adam nodded. "Then we'll stop them." Caleb's brows furrowed. "Adam, you can't just—" "We have to," Adam interrupted, his voice resolute. "This isn't just about Amanda anymore. It's about every mother and child they've taken advantage of." Caleb sighed, but didn't argue. Instead, he pulled out his phone. "If we're going to do this, we need evidence. Real evidence." Amanda looked between the two men, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time. "What can I do?" Adam turned to her, his expression serious. "You've already done enough. Now, it's our turn." The tension in the safe house was growing. Amanda spent most of her time caring for the twins, but the weight of the secrets she had revealed to Adam lingered in the air. Outside, Caleb had set up motion sensors and additional security measures, pacing between his laptop and phone with the focus of a man preparing for war. Adam, however, seemed distracted, his mind racing with thoughts that he hadn't yet voiced. That evening, Caleb stepped into the small living room, his face grim. "We have a problem," he said, glancing between Adam and Amanda. Amanda clutched Logan tighter, her heart racing. "What kind of problem?" Caleb sighed, his jaw tight. "There's been a breach." "What do you mean, a breach?" Adam asked, his tone sharp. Caleb placed his phone on the table, showing a log of suspicious activity. Someone's been leaking information. Every move we've made, every precaution, it's being tracked. They know where we are. Amanda's breath hitched, and Adam's expression darkened. How is that possible? This place was supposed to be secure. It is, Caleb said, his voice clipped. Which means the leak isn't external. It's internal. The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Amanda's gaze darted to Adam, then Caleb. You think it's me, she said, her voice trembling. You think I'm the one who's been feeding them information. No one said that, Adam replied quickly, his tone calm. But we need to figure out where the breach is coming from. Caleb's silence spoke volumes, and Amanda's eyes filled with tears. I don't even have a phone, she snapped. How could I possibly be the leak? It's not her, Adam said firmly, glaring at Caleb. We brought her here to protect her. She has everything to lose if they find her. Caleb hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. All right, but someone is feeding them information. And if it's not her, Adam's jaw tightened. Then it's someone on my team. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Adam's staff had been with him for years, their loyalty seemingly unshakable. But now, he couldn't ignore the possibility that someone close to him had betrayed them. We'll start with the communication logs, Caleb said, already pulling up files on his laptop. If there's a mole, we'll find them. Amanda sat silently, her arms wrapped around the twins as the weight of her situation pressed down on her. She had thought she was safe here, but now, even the people trying to protect her couldn't be trusted. The hours dragged on as Caleb worked tirelessly to trace the source of the leak. Adam stayed by his side, his frustration mounting with each dead end. Amanda, however, found herself pacing the small cabin, the twins asleep in the makeshift crib Adam had brought in earlier. Her thoughts raced as she replayed everything that had happened since the night Adam had found her in the rain. She had been so focused on survival that she hadn't stopped to consider the larger picture. Now, with her boys finally resting peacefully, she realized she couldn't keep relying on Adam and Caleb to fight her battles. She approached Adam in the kitchen, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. I need help. Adam glanced up, surprised. You're already helping by staying safe. That's not enough, Amanda replied. These people aren't just after me. They're doing this to other women, other children. If we're going to stop them, I have to be part of it. Adam set his coffee mug down, his gaze steady. You've been through enough. You don't have to put yourself in more danger. And what happens if you fail? Amanda countered, her voice rising. What happens to me? To my boys? To all the other mothers who don't even know what's coming for them? Adam hesitated, the fire in her voice catching him off guard. You have a point, he admitted, but we're not putting you at risk. I don't need to be in the middle of the action, Amanda said quickly, but I know how they think. I know how they operate. Let me help you find the weak points in their system. Adam studied her for a long moment before nodding. All right, we'll do it your way. Meanwhile, Caleb called out from the other room. Got something. Adam and Amanda rushed to the laptop, where Caleb pointed to a screen filled with communication logs. It's one of your staff, Adam, Caleb said grimly. Paul Rogers. He's been sending encrypted messages to an unknown number. Adam's eyes narrowed. Paul had been with him for years, trusted with some of his most sensitive projects. The betrayal stung more than he cared to admit. Where is he now? Adam asked. Still in the city, Caleb replied. But if he finds out we're onto him, he'll disappear. Amanda stepped forward, her voice steady. Then we need to act fast. Adam turned to her, his respect for her growing with every word. You're right. Caleb, set it up. We're confronting him tonight. The city lights reflected off the rain-soaked streets as Adam's car sped through the narrow alleys toward Paul Rogers' apartment. The tension inside the vehicle was palpable. Amanda sat in the back seat, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her sweater. Caleb was beside Adam, his tablet balanced on his lap, tracking Paul's location in real time. You're sure he's still there? Adam asked, his voice tight. Caleb nodded, tapping the screen. He hasn't moved in the past hour. Either he doesn't know we're onto him, or he thinks he's untouchable. Amanda leaned forward. What if he tries to run? Adam glanced at her through the rear-view mirror. He won't get far. Not with what we know. Amanda swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. She had never been part of something like this before, and the stakes were higher than she could have imagined. But she couldn't shake the thought of what might happen if Paul slipped through their fingers. He wasn't just a mole. He was the link between them and the people hunting her. The car came to a halt in front of a nondescript building. Adam killed the engine and turned to Caleb. Stay with Amanda. Amanda's eyes widened. No, I need to be there. It's not safe, Adam said firmly. I'm not asking for your permission, Amanda shot back, her voice steadier than she felt. If this is about me and my boys, I have a right to face him. Adam hesitated, seeing the determination in her eyes. Finally, he nodded. Stay behind me. Let me handle this. The three of them climbed the creaky staircase to the third floor, the air thick with tension. Caleb led the way, his phone in hand, while Amanda stayed close behind Adam. When they reached Paul's door, Adam knocked firmly, his expression hard as stone. There was a long pause before the door creaked open. Paul stood there, his face pale and lined with guilt. Mr. Warren, he stammered, his voice shaking. What are you doing here? Adam stepped forward, his tone sharp. You know exactly why I'm here. Paul's eyes darted to Amanda, then Caleb, before he stepped back into the apartment. I don't know what you're talking about. Adam followed him inside, his voice low and menacing. You've been feeding information to the people hunting Amanda. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise. Paul's hands trembled as he raised them defensively. It's not what you think. Then tell me what is, Adam snapped. Paul hesitated, his gaze flicking between them. They approached me months ago. They knew I worked for you and offered me money to pass along information about your movements. I didn't know it would lead to this. You didn't know. Amanda's voice cut through the room like a blade. She stepped forward, her anger radiating off her. You didn't know they were trying to take my babies? You didn't know they would send someone to attack us? Paul flinched at her words, his guilt written all over his face. I swear, I didn't know it would go this far. I was just... You were just selling us out, Caleb interrupted, his tone icy. Do you have any idea what they've done? How many lives they've destroyed? Paul hung his head, his shoulders sagging under the weight of his shame. I'm sorry. Adam stepped closer, his voice cold. Sorry doesn't cut it. You're going to fix this. Paul's head snapped up, his eyes wide. How? You're going to tell us everything, Adam said. Names, locations, every detail you've passed along. And you're going to help us shut them down. Paul hesitated, but the intensity in Adam's gaze left no room for argument. He nodded reluctantly. All right, I'll do it. The following day, Paul sat at the kitchen table in the safe house, a laptop open in front of him. Amanda watched from the corner, her arms crossed as she cradled Logan, her eyes never leaving Paul's hands. Trust was a fragile thing, and Paul had shattered it. Caleb leaned over Paul's shoulder, watching as he accessed encrypted files and forwarded information to Adam. This is everything they've sent me, Paul said, his voice subdued. Contacts, locations, transaction records. They use multiple shell companies to move money. Adam reviewed the files, his jaw tightening. This confirms what Amanda said. The hospital is just the tip of the iceberg. They've been running this operation for years. Do you think this will be enough? Amanda asked, her voice cautious. It's a start, Caleb replied. But if we're going to take them down, we need more. Something that ties this directly to the people in charge. Amanda shifted uncomfortably. And what happens to him? She asked, nodding toward Paul. Paul flinched but didn't speak. Adam glanced at her, his expression unreadable. That depends on him, he said. If he cooperates and gives us everything we need, he might get a second chance. And if he doesn't? Amanda pressed. Adam's tone turned cold. Then he'll face the consequences. The room fell silent, the weight of the situation pressing down on everyone. For now, Paul was an asset, but Amanda couldn't shake the feeling that their battle was only just beginning. The safe house felt anything but safe. Despite Paul's cooperation and the damning files now in Adam's possession, the tension inside the cabin was suffocating. Amanda sat by the window, one hand gently rocking the crib where Lucas and Logan were finally sleeping. She couldn't relax. Every sound outside made her heart race. Adam and Caleb were deep in conversation in the adjoining room. "The files are useful," Caleb said, his voice low. "But we need more. These people are powerful, Adam. If we move too soon without solid evidence tying them to the trafficking, they'll bury this and come after us harder." Adam leaned forward, his jaw tight. "What about the names Paul gave us? Any leads?" "A few," Caleb admitted, "but they're scattered. Most of the contacts seem to be middlemen. The ones calling the shots remain in the shadows." Adam rubbed his temples, frustration creeping in. "We don't have time to wait. Amanda and the twins can't keep hiding forever." The sound of breaking glass shattered the tense quiet. Both men froze before racing toward the living room. Amanda stood by the crib, her face pale, as shards of glass glinted on the floor near her feet. "They found us," Amanda whispered, clutching the edge of the crib as the twins began to cry. Adam stepped forward, pulling her behind him. "Caleb, secure the door," he barked, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. Before Caleb could move, a heavy thud echoed from the back of the cabin. Someone was trying to break in. Adam grabbed a nearby chair and wedged it under the front door handle. "Get them to the safe room," he told Amanda. "I'm not leaving you out here." Amanda protested. "You have to protect your boys," Adam said firmly, his eyes locking with hers. "Go, now." Reluctantly, Amanda gathered the twins and disappeared into the small, reinforced room Caleb had prepared earlier. The sound of the door locking behind her sent a surge of relief through Adam. Seconds later, the back door splintered open. Two masked men stepped inside, their movements swift and calculated. Caleb moved first, tackling one of them while Adam grabbed a heavy lamp and swung it at the second. The intruder dodged, pulling a knife from his waistband. The struggle was chaotic. Caleb managed to disarm the first man and pin him to the floor, but Adam found himself cornered as the second man advanced. Amanda could hear the commotion from the safe room, her heart pounding as she tried to keep the twins calm. Finally, with a burst of strength, Adam knocked the knife out of the man's hand and delivered a solid punch to his jaw, sending him crashing to the floor. Caleb restrained the other intruder, breathing heavily as the adrenaline coursed through his veins. "Who sent you?" Adam demanded, towering over the man who now lay groaning on the ground. The intruder spat blood and sneered. "You're making enemies you can't handle, Warren." Adam's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." By the next morning, the safe house was quiet again, but the atmosphere remained tense. The intruders had been handed over to a trusted contact of Adam's in law enforcement, but their cryptic warning lingered in everyone's mind. Amanda sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling as she sipped her coffee. Adam joined her, his face bruised but calm. "They're getting desperate," he said. "That means we're getting close." Amanda shook her head. "Close to what?" "They're still out there, and now they know exactly where we are." "Not for long," Caleb said, entering the room with his laptop. "I traced the calls one of the intruders made before the attack. It led to a warehouse downtown." "What's in the warehouse?" Amanda asked, her voice cautious. "Probably more than we want to find," Caleb replied grimly. "It's a distribution hub. If they're storing documents, money, or worse, it'll be there." Adam leaned back, considering their options. "We need to act fast. If they think we're onto them, they'll clear out." Amanda glanced between the two men, her brow furrowing. "And what happens if it's a trap? They know you'll come after them." "That's a risk we have to take," Adam said. "But we're not going in blind. Caleb, you'll hack into their security system and disable the cameras." "Amanda," he hesitated before continuing. "I need you to stay here with the boys." Amanda opened her mouth to protest, but Adam held up a hand. "This is non-negotiable. If something goes wrong, I need to know you're safe." Her shoulders sagged, but she nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but you promise me you'll come back." Adam's lips quirked into a faint smile. "I always keep my promises." That night, as Adam and Caleb prepared for the mission, Amanda stood in the doorway, watching them with a mix of fear and admiration. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she thought she'd lost forever: hope. The warehouse stood in the shadow of the city's industrial district, its unassuming exterior betraying the darkness that lay within. Adam and Caleb sat in the car parked a block away, reviewing their plan for the final time. Caleb's laptop displayed a live feed from the building's perimeter cameras, which he had successfully hacked. "They've got 6 cameras covering the entrances," Caleb said, his voice calm but focused. "I've looped the footage, so they won't see us coming." Adam nodded, adjusting the earpiece Caleb had handed him. "What about security inside?" Caleb hesitated. "We're not sure how many people are inside, but this isn't a small operation. We should assume they'll have muscle." Adam exhaled slowly, his mind running through the stakes. If this warehouse contained the evidence they needed to expose the trafficking ring, it would be the breakthrough they had been waiting for. But if they were wrong, or if the traffickers anticipated their move, it could cost them everything. "Let's do this," Adam said, his voice steady. The 2 men exited the car and moved silently toward the warehouse. The air was heavy with the scent of rain-soaked concrete and rusting metal. Caleb picked the lock on a side door, and they slipped inside, their footsteps muffled by the cavernous space. The warehouse was dimly lit, with stacks of crates and filing cabinets arranged in haphazard rows. Adam's eyes scanned the area, noting the faint hum of machinery and the muffled voices coming from deeper within. He motioned for Caleb to follow him as they navigated the maze of storage. "Over here," Caleb whispered, pointing to a corner where several filing cabinets stood next to a desk cluttered with papers and laptops. Adam began rifling through the files, his heart pounding as he read names, dates, and transaction records. It was all here, proof of the trafficking operation, detailing how they had coerced vulnerable mothers into giving up their children and laundered the money through shell companies. "Bingo," Caleb said, pulling a hard drive from one of the laptops. "This should have everything we need." Before Adam could respond, the faint sound of footsteps echoed through the warehouse. He froze, motioning for Caleb to stay quiet. The voices grew louder, accompanied by the distinct clink of weapons being cocked. "They're onto us," Caleb whispered, his grip tightening on the hard drive. Adam's mind raced. "We can't leave without the evidence." "Agreed," Caleb said, "but we're outnumbered." Adam scanned their surroundings, his eyes landing on a fire escape ladder leading to an upper platform. "We'll split up. I'll draw their attention. You get out with the hard drive, Adam." "No arguments," Adam said firmly. "Go." Caleb hesitated, but eventually nodded, slipping into the shadows as Adam made his way toward the voices. His heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. If this was the only way to secure the evidence, so be it. The voices grew louder as Adam stepped into view, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. 3 men emerged from the shadows, their faces obscured by masks. Each of them carried a weapon, and their stances were tense. Well, one of them said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Look who decided to pay us a visit." Adam forced a smirk. "What can I say? I'm curious about your business." The man chuckled darkly. "Curiosity kills, Mr. Warren. And tonight, you're about to learn that the hard way." Adam's pulse quickened, but he didn't let it show. "You're making a mistake," he said, keeping their attention on him. "You think taking me out will solve your problems, but you're wrong. People know what you've been doing. Even if I'm gone, they'll come for you." "Brave words for a dead man," the leader sneered, raising his weapon. At that moment, a loud crash echoed through the warehouse as Caleb triggered one of the forklifts near the entrance. The distraction was enough to make the men turn, giving Adam the split second he needed to grab a metal pipe from the floor and swing it at the nearest attacker. The man crumpled to the ground, his weapon clattering away. Chaos erupted as Adam ducked behind a stack of crates, narrowly avoiding the gunfire that followed. He could hear Caleb shouting from the far end of the warehouse, drawing the men's attention further away. Adam took the opportunity to slip through the shadows, his focus on getting back to Caleb and evidence. When he reached the exit, Caleb was already there, clutching the hard drive tightly. His face was pale, but determined. "I got it," he said breathlessly. "Good," Adam replied, pulling him toward the car. "Let's go before they realize we're gone." They sprinted to the vehicle, the sound of shouting and gunfire fading behind them. As they sped away, Adam glanced at Caleb, relief washing over him. "Did you check the drive?" Caleb nodded, holding it up. "It's all here. Names, accounts, everything we need to bring them down." Adam exhaled, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. "We're one step closer." The next morning, Adam and Caleb sat in Adam's office, the hard drive connected to Caleb's laptop. Amanda stood nearby, holding Lucas while Logan rested in a bassinet. The room was tense, but filled with determination as Caleb clicked through files, revealing detailed records of the trafficking network. "This is it," Caleb said, pointing to the screen. "Names of everyone involved, the shell companies they're using to launder the money, even locations of their operations." Adam leaned forward, his jaw tight. "This is enough to expose them, but we need to get it into the right hands." "What about the police?" Amanda asked, her voice tinged with skepticism. Caleb shook his head. "Not all of them can be trusted. An operation this big is bound to have people on the inside protecting it." "What about the press?" Amanda suggested. "If this goes public, they won't be able to hide it." Adam nodded thoughtfully. A controlled leak could work. The public pressure would force law enforcement to act, and it would make it harder for the traffickers to cover their tracks. Caleb hesitated. "It's risky. If we release this without a solid plan, they'll come after us, and hard." Amanda stepped closer, her eyes fierce. "They're already coming after us. We can't let them keep doing this to other families." Adam met her gaze, seeing the fire in her eyes. "She's right. We'll make the leak, but we'll coordinate it carefully. I'll call a few trusted contacts in the media." Over the next few hours, Adam and Caleb worked tirelessly to prepare the evidence for release. They compiled the most damning documents into a secure folder, ensuring every detail was backed up multiple times. Amanda watched from the corner of the room, her heart pounding as the plan took shape. Finally, Adam leaned back in his chair, his face set with determination. "It's ready. I'll contact my media connections tonight." The following day, headlines exploded across the news. Major trafficking ring exposed. Names and evidence released in shocking leak. The media frenzy was immediate. Reporters camped outside the implicated hospital, demanding answers. Government officials scrambled to address the scandal as protests erupted across the city. Amanda sat in front of the television, her heart racing as she watched the coverage. The names she had feared for so long were now plastered across the screen. For the first time, she felt a flicker of hope. "They can't ignore this," she said quietly, turning to Adam. "People know the truth now." Adam nodded, though his expression remained cautious. "It's a step forward, but it's not over yet. The people at the top won't go down without a fight." Caleb entered the room, his phone in hand. "I just got word from one of our contacts in law enforcement. Arrest warrants are being issued as we speak." Amanda exhaled sharply, relief washing over her. "So it's really happening?" "It's happening," Caleb confirmed. "But we still need to be careful. They'll be desperate, and desperate people are dangerous." As if on cue, Adam's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, his brows furrowing as he read the message. "It's from Paul," he said, his voice low. "He says they know we're behind the leak." Amanda's blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to move fast," Adam replied, standing. "They'll try to retaliate, but we're not going to give them the chance." The next few days were a whirlwind of chaos. Arrests were made across the city as law enforcement raided locations tied to the trafficking ring. High-profile individuals were dragged into the scandal, their careers and reputations destroyed overnight. For Amanda, The weight of the last few weeks began to lift. She watched as justice unfolded, knowing that her decision to speak up had made a difference. But the fear lingered. Fear that the people who had hunted her would find a way to strike back. The weeks following the media leak were transformative. Amanda sat on the porch of Adam's mansion, cradling Lucas while Logan giggled in a baby swing nearby. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the tension that had ruled her life for so long. Adam stepped outside, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder, his face showing the weight of recent events, but also a newfound calm. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his tone soft. Amanda looked up at him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Better. For the first time, I feel like I can breathe." "They've arrested more people connected to the operation," Adam said, sitting down beside her. "Some of the higher-ups are cooperating to reduce their sentences. They're giving up names." Amanda's smile faltered, her gaze drifting to her twins. "Does that mean it's over? Or are there still people out there who will come after us?" Adam leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "We've done what we can to dismantle their network, but I won't pretend it's completely over. These kinds of organizations don't disappear overnight. But you and the boys are safe here." Amanda glanced at him, her eyes softening. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you for everything you've done." Adam chuckled, the sound warm and genuine. "You don't owe me anything, Amanda. You've been through more than anyone should ever have to endure. Helping you, it gave me purpose." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the unspoken bond between them hung in the air. But before either could say more, Caleb stepped out onto the porch, holding his ever-present tablet. "Hate to interrupt," he said, though the smirk on his face suggested otherwise. "What is it?" Adam asked. "Just got confirmation," Caleb replied. "The last of their financial assets have been frozen. They're officially out of resources." "That's good news," Amanda said, relief washing over her. "So what happens now?" Adam stood, his gaze steady. "Now we focus on moving forward." Months later, the mansion was no longer the cold, empty place it had once been. The laughter of Lucas and Logan echoed through its halls, filling the space with a warmth that Adam hadn't realized he was missing. Amanda stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup as Adam walked in, carrying a bag of groceries. "You didn't have to go out," she said, smiling as she wiped her hands on a towel. "I wanted to," Adam replied, setting the bag down. "Besides, you deserve a break." As they worked side by side, Amanda couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed. The man who had once seemed distant and untouchable was now a central part of her life. He had become more than a protector. He was family. Later that evening, they sat in the living room, the twins crawling around on the floor. Caleb joined them, a rare sight, without his tablet in hand. "So, any plans now that things have settled?" Caleb asked, leaning back in his chair. Adam exchanged a glance with Amanda before answering. "There's a lot to think about, but I've been considering starting a foundation, something to help mothers like Amanda. Women who've been targeted or manipulated by systems that are supposed to protect them." Amanda's eyes widened, her voice filled with emotion. "You do that?" Adam nodded. "We've already taken down one network, but there are others out there. If we can prevent what happened to you from happening to someone else, it's worth it." Tears filled Amanda's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "You're incredible, Adam." "It's not just me," Adam said, his gaze shifting to Caleb and Amanda. "None of this would have been possible without both of you." As the evening wore on, the twins fell asleep in their crib, their tiny faces peaceful and content. Amanda stood by the window, watching the moonlight cast a soft glow over the garden. Adam joined her, his hands in his pockets. "You've changed my life, Amanda," he said quietly. She turned to him, her voice trembling with emotion. "And you've saved mine." Adam smiled, the kind of smile that held promises of a brighter future. "Then I'd say we make a good team." Amanda laughed softly, leaning her head against his shoulder. For the first time in years, the future didn't seem so uncertain. Together, they had built something new, A family born not of blood, but of trust, sacrifice, and love. Call to action for the video. Thank you so much for watching this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Your support helps us continue creating impactful content for you. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Speech balloon. What part of the story impacted you the most? Was it the moment Adam decided to help Amanda, the emotional bond they built, or the dramatic takedown of the trafficking ring? Let us know in the comments. Have an idea for a story you'd love to see on the channel? We're always looking for new ideas that resonate with you. Share your suggestions below, and who knows, your idea might inspire our next video. Thanks again for being part of our community. Stay tuned for more stories that touch the heart and inspire change.